Okay, thank you. Welcome back. We'll move on to item 29B at Old Buckingham, 3PL 2021-1564 in outline format. And we have Councillor Stephen Askew as the ward rep. If you want to come sit here, please, Councillor Askew. And we should have John Norfolk, but I'm not sure whether he's here. No, lovely surname like Norfolk. I'd love to be adopted by him. Nigel Norfolk, I think that's got a nice ring to it. Okay, thank you, naughty Nigel. Okay, we'll hand over to Tom, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So as stated, members, this application seeks outline permission with all matters reserved except for access for the erection of 3 dwellings at the coal storage yard road from Staxford Lane to Houghton Road. Just to run through the presentation. So here we have an aerial photograph of the site showing the red line and in the aerial context of the wider area. And to give the context of the site to the settlement boundary, you can see that the site is a considerable distance away from the settlement boundary, which impacts on policy HAU03, which I will come on to sort of later in the presentation. We have the location plan with the site outlined in red and additional land owned by the applicant outlined in blue. And an indicative site plan that has been provided to show how the development could be presented on site. And a 3D model, again, just further indicating how it could be presented on site at detailed stage. An indicative street scene. And some site photographs, just showing that the site in its sort of current condition state. So in terms of the assessment of the application, we have had no objections from any statutory consultees. However, notwithstanding this, as I highlighted on the previous slide, the site is a considerable distance away from the assessment boundary of Old Buckingham, and as such, it is contrary to policy HAU03 and is therefore considered to be unacceptable in principle. Further to this, officers consider that the development of the site would result in an adverse impact on the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside, contrary to policies Gen 02, Com 01, ENV 05 and HAU 03 of the Breckland local plan. And further to this, sort of following on from the distance to the settlement boundary, officers also considered that the development would constitute unsustainable development and is therefore considered to be unacceptable in that regard also. So in summary, officers are making a recommendation of refusal for the reasons previously highlighted, but also seeking delegated authority to add a further reason for refusal with regard to nutrient pollution and the GIRAMs, as Simon spoke about earlier, if is also required. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Askew, you get to go first, last and in the middle, but you still only get 3 minutes. Thank you.
So thank you and good morning, members, and thank you for allowing me to address you on this application from a local member perspective. Firstly, I acknowledge that in strict policy terms, there are a couple of criteria in which this application doesn't meet. That said, I believe the benefit of the proposed development outweighs these, and I would like to challenge some of the points in the report as the local member with local knowledge, which I believe to be relevant. Firstly, this is a brownfield site, which has been in use as a coal merchant by the family here for generations, serving the local and wider community. Now, of course, modern renewable methods of heating and insulation are bringing the solid fuel business to a natural end. Barely 150 yards from this site is another brownfield site, a former builder's yard, which in policy terms is no different from this site, and yet it has had permission for and has built out 2 properties in the last couple of years. Nothing wrong with that, perfectly suitable, an asset to the parish. I fail to see any difference with that site and this, and yet one is permitted and the other is recommended for refusal. I take issue with misleading comments in the report from the PC regarding the road being dangerous. It isn't dangerous. Police records show that. Some of the motorists who use it are definitely dangerous, but that's not a planning matter. I've lived and worked and currently do on this road virtually all my 58 years, and I like to think I have a little idea about it. I can't recall a single accident on this stretch in my time. It's certainly a case that traffic numbers have increased markedly in the last few years, This is due to sat-nav sending motorists through as most direct route to the A11. There is an alternative route, but most motorists seem to prefer this one. The proposed development would have no impact on the amount of traffic using this road currently, particularly taking into consideration the current and historic movements from the site. And I would also point out that highways have had no objection to the development either. In recent years, when Breckland couldn't demonstrate a 5-year land planning supply, a number of permissions were granted in Old Buckingham, which ordinarily wouldn't have been. These have been built out and shown to be a real asset to the area. This would be likewise, and not only that, it would make excellent use of a brownfield site, which otherwise, like the former builder's yard opposite, will sit as an eyesore for years when it could be a perfectly sensible, modest, subtle development, provided much needing housing. The neighbours have no objection and it would enhance the area. Finally, I would just like to challenge the fallacy of the unsustainable tag, which is routinely wheeled out to try to justify refusal recommendations. This proposed development is no more or no less sustainable or unsustainable than all the developments that have gone before or are currently going on in the village now. Old Buckingham is a service centre village with 4 schools within walking and cycling distance. I know this very well, as I did it myself for a decade. One paragraph, Chairman. Norfolk will require the car for some time to come. Even residents living next door to the local shop have to drive elsewhere for other shops and services. So I would urge the committee to approve this application for the reasons outlined, as it's an ideal opportunity for limited gradual growth, which is so important for rural parishes to remain vibrant. Not to do so would be missing a trick. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, it's open to questions from members at all. No. Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. Could we have an officer comment, please, on the brownfield site issue? Because clearly, as we move away from coal, coal yards are a bit of an eyesore, so an adverse impact on intrinsic beauty is, in my mind, a bit hard to justify.
Simon, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the fact that this is a brownfield site is something that can be given some weight in the decision-making process. However, there's nothing in the policy that essentially allows for it. I think there's a couple of issues here that have been looked at in terms of objecting to this application. The first is in relation to its distance from the village, and I hear what Councillor Askew says in terms of the need for a car in rural Norfolk, but policies in the local plan are quite clear in terms of the settlement hierarchy and development within or adjacent to the settlement boundary. This is some distance from there. I think there are also concerns about the details of this development in terms of its design, in terms of its layout. So there are detail issues as well as in principle issues as well. So I think the fact that it's brownfield doesn't in this particular instance give enough weight to overcome those concerns, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Attawell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I actually agree with Councillor Askew. I think that we've got to apply a little bit of common sense to this application. If that's a brownfield site, if that was a green leafy field, I'd be taking a different view. But the fact that the brownfield site sits there, and there was concrete and various other structures on there, surely putting these dwellings on there is going to tidy the whole area up, because if not, what else are you going to do with it? I also think we've set some precedent on a similar sort of situation in Beatley some months back with the old bus depot. That was outside settlement boundary, not even adjacent to settlement boundary. And the committee approved an application to put dwellings on there. Perfectly good use of the site, that's brownfield, and turn it into something useful when the commercial use for the site can no longer be substantiated. So I support this. I think there's got to be a bit of common sense. Highways haven't objected on which is quite important. So I think you've already said, Tom, that all the statutory consultees, none of them have complained about it. So my stance is that this should be approved, I think, on the basis of common sense, and it's a brownfield site.
Thank you. I think that was an objection from the Royal Air Force, but anyway, we'll take that. Any further questions or can we move on? Okay, thank you.
Very, very quickly.
Please.
On that. Yeah, and as you know, members, you can give weight to the fact that this is a brownfield site, and you can take the view that you consider that weight outweighs the harm to the development plan and to the other objections that we've indicated. My advice would be that if you think that this is a potential location for residential development, that this is probably not the right scheme for it. So I would suggest that we maybe approach it on that basis, that as a brownfield site, you consider this may be suitable for development, but we need to come up with a scheme that is potentially more sympathetic to its setting as set out in the report.
Thank you. I will indulge the two more speakers, which is Councillor Gilbert and Councillor Crane. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Could we have this site plan up again, please, which shows the that as well? To me, 3 houses that size on that plot is too many. You know, it doesn't leave, to me, the right communal space, not communal, but private space. They look pretty big, but compared with the houses, I think if we were looking at a scheme on this site, I would have thought 2 would have been maximum for me, or the other alternative would be for social housing.
Okay,
I'm not happy with that as for 3 like that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crane, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Likewise, I'm going to support this scheme because of a brownfield site, but I would say it's an outline planning permission. If it's the set out isn't as planners so wish or like or desire, that can be discussed with the applicant and changes made. But I'm supportive of it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Atwell, just to finish, please.
Councillor Crane has made my point for me. This is an outline application, so any design issues can be sorted out at a reserved matters application.
Thank you. I would remind members, if they do look at their planning history, this was previously an application for 5, so it's been reduced to 3. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, but originally. Okay. Thank you very much. So, with reference to this item, item number 29B at Old Buckingham, 3PL 2021-1564. Your officer's recommendation on this is one of refusal. Can I show of hands for refusal, please? 2. Oh, and those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Okay. So from the floor, please, can I have a recommendation? I'll take Councillor Atwell, please.
Recommend approval on the basis that the brownfield site is a material consideration for this committee.
And I gather that's seconded by Councillor Crane. Yep. Okay. Mr. Horn.
Can I just suggest an amendment to that? It's a fact of law that it's a consideration. I think what you mean is that material consideration in the committee's opinion overrides and is greater than the considerations of the development plan.
There we go. Councillor Guybird.
My fault.
Sorry. Go on.
I think it is a material consideration that the intrinsic beauty argument fails because of its current use as a coal yard. So the proposed reason for refusal disagreed with.
That's slightly different. Maybe we should just go back one step. Yeah. If I slightly amend the wording that Councillor Atwell used, that was seconded. Shall we vote on that first?
Okay, so from the floor, and I've had a seconder, the recommendation is that we approve this item. Could I have a show of hands for approval, please? 1, 2. And those against? 2. Yes, please.
And therefore, now that you have you've resolved not to follow the officer recommendation of refusal and grant permission, the previous wording that I used in the application we heard before becomes relevant, i.e. the issue concerning a unilateral undertaking and consideration of the special areas of conservation.
No.
Is that a request that I do?
I think
One of your greatest hits.
I think what we'll do is we'll have a little code word for that. Call it sort of like, I don't know, strawberry gatto or something like that. We'll give it a title of some description. So this this item is approved. Thank you very much for your time, Councillor Askew. So we're going to move swiftly on to item 9C, 3PL 2019-0010, a full application at Sam Tony. I have Trevor Bunce, please, who is here for the Parish Council, Jason Parker, who's the agent, and Councillor Timothy Burt, who's the ward rep.
Jason can't.
Can't come.
attend. Yeah.
No one else coming on their behalf?
No, I've got a statement to read out, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bunce, are you chairman or vice chairman or just a member? That's fine. That's fine. I just didn't want to not recognise you if you were the chairman. That's fine. Thank you. So I'll hand over to you, please, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As I mentioned, the agent can't attend and has sent in a brief statement, which I will read at the end of this presentation, just in advance of the Councillor Burt and the Parish Council speaking. So in terms of this application, it is recommended for refusal as set out in the agenda, and does seek full plan permission for the erection of 54 dwellings, associated roads, parking, hard and soft landscaping, and open space. That shows you the site and the wider context. And one issue for debate that is addressed within the report is the relationship of the site with the market town of Houghton and with the village of Sayham Tony and the parish boundary for Sayham Tony. And I will come back to that in a short while. So this shows the site in relation to the settlement boundary. And I must stress that this is the settlement boundary for Houghton town and the town council area of Houghton. So this shows the site plan, and you can see that around a half of the site is proposed for development, with the rest of the site given over to landscaping and play areas. That shows the mix of accommodation. The proposal includes 25% affordable housing, and the mix of housing is considered to be acceptable. So the issue that is set out in your report in terms of the principle of this development relates to the fact that the development site is within the parish of Sayham Tony, and the relevance of that to policies within the Sayham Tony neighbourhood plan. Just to correct an element at paragraph 1.12 of the report. Let me just get to it. So the first sentence of that talks about the proposal not complying with policy HOU04 of the local plan, as well as policy 2C of the Sayham Tony neighbourhood plan. What it goes on to say is that same Tony neighbourhood plan, having just been adopted, is considered to be the presiding development plan document having the earliest adoption date. I think this should read the later adoption date. It was made after the local plan, so carries more weight. You can see from here that same Tony neighbourhood plan includes a rural gap map, and this proposal, if I can get my mouse working, sits within that area there. It also looks at key views into the site. One of the issues in relation to the site also relates to flood risk and the need for the developer to carry out a sequential test. There is disagreement, it's true to say, between the agent and your officers in relation to this, but our view is that a sequential test is required for this development. This shows the site access plan. There are no objections from the Highway Authority, and if members were minded to approve the application, then suitable conditions could be imposed to address a proper access. Just going through the street scenes and the house types. You see a mix of 2, 3, 4 bed houses with some single-story dwellings within them. You can see that the site is currently agricultural and arable, and you can see the relationship with the settlement of Houghton to the back of the site. And these are the properties around the site. And coming back again to the location plan and the relationship with the settlement of Houghton. So that there are a number of issues in relation to this application, which are set out within the report and form the reasons for refusal in relation to this proposal. The first is in relation to its location. And whilst it is directly adjacent to the settlement boundary of Houghton, it is within the parish of Sayham Tony. Policies within the Sayham Tony neighbourhood plan carry as much weight as the development plan, and in this instance, being the most recent document, would carry more weight. What I would say is that this is contrary to the policies within Sayham Tony neighbourhood plan. It's also considered to be contrary to HOU 04, and you will see a reason for refusal based upon both those policies. There's also concern about the impact of the development on the landscape and the character of the area. Sayham Tony neighbourhood plan policies require a proper assessment of landscape and character impact to be carried out. And it is considered that in this instance, this has not been done, and therefore the proposal is contrary to policy 5 of the Sayham Tony neighbourhood plan. We've also put on reasons for refusal in relation to the lack of a sequential test in relation to flood risk, as well as the lack of a habitat regulation assessment in relation to protected habitats. I would also draw attention to the fact that there is a letter being submitted from George Freeman MP. The letter is summarised in full in the report and can also be seen on the website. I'll also, Chairman, just read out the short note from Jason Parker, who is the agent for this application, and unfortunately can't attend planning committee today. His statement reads, I would like to thank Rebecca and the council for their cooperation and hard work on this proposal. Unfortunately, a number of things changed during the planning process, such as the environmental assessment regulations and maps changing, which required lots of additional information. We are now at a point where there are no statutory consultee objections. The issues relate to matters which are subjective, including landscape impacts, whether this is a suitable location for housing, and whether a sequential assessment is required. In terms of location of the site, there is no policy within the same Tony neighbourhood plan which actually prevents development. There is a landscape assessment and policy, but none of the identified important views, as shown in my submitted report, are affected by the site. The proposal would find policy support in relation to the policies relating to Houghton, which relates to sites adjoining the settlement boundary. Whilst the site is technically within the parish of St Tony, it is also on the edge of Houghton, and the development would round off Houghton. We would like the application to be either approved or deferred so that we can provide additional information. The additional information we could provide would be a full landscape and visual impact assessment, which is underway, demonstrate that the homes will be outside of the surface water flooding area, providing a sequential assessment to show that this is the best available site in relation to further development adjacent to the Houghton settlement boundary. And that's the end of the statement, Chairman. I would just remind members that the application is recommended for refusal for the grounds set out in the report, and additional reasons in relation to nutrient neutrality and GI RAMs. I would also say that it would not be our recommendation, Chairman, that the application be deferred. The application's been in for some time and these matters have been able to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, I just have to declare that I did actually receive a video, or not video, a link to a video from a Mr. John Dove, who I believe lives on Langmere Road, showing 2 or 3 occasions when there was quite substantial flooding around the area of the bridge, and also damage to the bridge caused by heavy goods. I would have thought heavy goods because it was virtually demolished on one side. Sort of really to a degree contradicting anything that highways would say about the safety of the road. And it is actually very busy road in and out of one. But just to highlight that to you, that I have received that. Okay, Councillor Burt, would you like to go first or last, sir?
I'll go second, should I? That's last.
That's last. Okay, you can go, I can make it go 10th, which means all these like go in front of you. But no, I'll take Mr. Trevor Bunce, please, who's councillor for the Parish Council. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And a lot of what I was going to say has already been well covered with Simon. Thank you very much. So over 3 years, this planning process has been going through, and both the Parish Council and the Neighbourhood Plan Work Group fully agree with the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. This application actually can contravene 17 of our plans of the 22 policies. Most importantly, the remoteness to the settlement boundary, its intrusion, as we've seen the pictures up there, into the rural gap. If this goes ahead, we would have houses in St Tony on the wrong side of the rural gap, which is obviously, in our opinion, totally unacceptable. In particular, this site is part of the Houghton Brook floodplain, and there's loads of evidence that from both our local flood groups and residents of Langmere Road that shows that the water actually goes up to, on occasions, their gardens. And we can't see how any SUDS or attenuation measures could be effective when the water table is above ground level. There's no need for me to describe the non-compliances in full. I think Simon's done that well, thank you. The scale of the non-compliances and the number of objections to the application speaks for themselves. And therefore, you know, we feel that unanimous refusal is, will harm the village and public confidence in the planning system. Our neighbourhood plan allocates 70 new houses on 9 sites that were selected from a total of 18 sites that were put forward. It went through a rigorous and independent site assessment by 4 specialist consultants and organisations. The Nilefield site, this one, was included in the assessment. Its conclusion was it was totally unsuitable for development, and nothing has changed since that assessment was made, except we've had more evidence of flooding. The local plan, HOU04, sets a minimum target of 33 new dwellings for Southampton. We've got 70 allocated in the neighbourhood plan. There's already 46 dwellings that Brecklands Councils itself has confirmed have already been completed or committed to. And so that gives a total of 116, which is 4 times the minimum target. So another 54 would obviously push us right over the top. Anyway, I trust you will all agree and refuse this application accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Burke, please. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Committee. So I agree with the officer recommendations, and I'm speaking against approval of this application. I'm not going to dwell on the Southampton neighbourhood plan, which has just completed a full 6-year process to become a made plan, other than to say that this application doesn't fit within that neighbourhood plan. And it didn't fit the emerging plan when the original application was brought forward. I want to concentrate on the flooding risk. This is a known risk. This site is a flood meadow and has been flooded multiple times since I've lived locally. The proposal includes building floor levels higher to avoid the 1 in 20 year flood event, but even the actual increased height is somewhat disputed. But in any case, 20 years is no time at all. And we all know that flood events are increasing in regularity and in severity. When a plan, as this one does, includes a documented escape route in case of flood, how can the site possibly be acceptable? How can this be regarded as sustainable? This shouldn't be acceptable even if there was no local plan, no neighbourhood plan, no 5-year land supply. Let us consider that costs, if we were to accept this, wouldn't only fall on the residents affected by any flood, but although those costs would be bad enough, but there's also costs for this council. And if the worst happen, we would need to implement an emergency plan to support residents, which could include those unable to return to home. And there would then be clear-up costs afterwards. It makes no sense to create additional risks and problems like this. And my last point, the proposal includes 25% affordable housing, which elsewhere would be most welcome indeed. But the optics of providing additional affordable units here is terrible. If approved, it would appear that affordable housing is biased to substandard sites. And those substandard sites may cause residents stress and real additional costs, for example, in trying to obtain flood insurance. So finally, just as in a wider context, some of the elements considered here, I think, need to feed into our local plan review so that it's crystal clear that it's not worth applying for development on sites such as this. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. I've got Councillor Attawell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, for me, this is clearly one that we should refuse. The site falls within, with regard to this relationship between the Houghton boundary and the Southampton boundary, this site falls within the defined boundary for the Southampton neighbourhood plan, which was adopted later. So for me, that's crystal clear that that takes precedent here. Also, Southampton have done an extraordinary amount of work on the neighbourhood plan. And they've also put in a positive housing allocation with sites defined within their settlement for development that the community would be happy with. So I've no hesitation in putting my hand up and saying I support the refusal of this application. Thank you.
Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a couple of, obviously I agree with a lot of what has been said. There's a couple of things. Highways, I am absolutely amazed that they have no objection. I would not want to come out of there in a car. You've got a blind bridge to your left, and you know it beggars belief that they do not object to this. And the other thing in Mr. Parker's report, he said about the houses are not in the floodplain, and not in the flood area. This field is called Nile Field for a reason, because it floods, and we got the problem of rain and surface water coming from the Brandon Road, coming through the Wayland Avenue, Ringmere Road, Langmere, into that field. And one of the ways they are suggesting that they're going to prevent these houses being flooded is to put a dam in front of them. In other words, they want to put a bund all the way along the back of Langmere Road, so that the surface water doesn't carry on into the field. Now, to me, that is tantamount to saying this area floods because we're going to put a dam in. And putting a dam in along the back of Langmere Road is only going to cause that water to stay in the houses in Langmere Road, causing flooding in that area to be even worse than it is. There's no way I can support this application.
Thank you. Any further questions from members? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You've not really had any questions, so I'm going to, if you indulge me. Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate the officers that they've recognised all the issues of planning which would have arose if this would have been recommended for approval. So I recommend, I can congratulate the integrity of planning officers.
Thank you. Okay, no further questions. Okay, we'll move swiftly on, as they say. So for this item, which is item 9C, it's 3PL 2019-0010 at Sam Tony. Your officer's recommendation on this is one of refusal. Could I have a show of hands for refusal, please? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. This item is refused. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to move on to item 9D, 3PL 2021-1706, and this is a full application at Griston. And I've got Phil Houghton to speak. I'd have to come and sit on the right-hand side, please, Mr. Houghton. Thank you. And Mr. Houghton's here on behalf of the Ministry of Justice, is that correct? So you've got to all behave yourself, otherwise he'll throw you in the clink. Okay, and this one over to you, please, Simon.
Yeah, well, I could get the technology.
And if he does decide to arrest you, there's two ladies at the back with handcuffs in their handbags, I'm sure, ready to drag you off. Yes, I'm sure they are. You're moving around the room now, starting to upset my members. Thank you. I've got problems with mice. Oh, yes, sorry. Not doing my job properly. Ladies, seeing as you're sitting there, could I have your names, please? Kelly Lloyd, and Megan Freeman. Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, you're all from the Ministry of Justice. You're not prison officers or anything like that. Good, but not good. Just keep our record straight. Are we ready to go?
We are ready to go.
Okay, far away.
This application seeks full planning permission, spoke too soon, for the demolition of an existing structure and a construction of a two-storey house block, a new multi-faith building, a small extension to a visitor building, to provide a lift, construction of all-weather pitch and athletics track, relocation of polytunnels and landscaping, together with additional car parking outside of the secure perimeter fence. This gives you an indication of the site and its relationship with the village of Griston. And this shows you that the site is close to the settlement boundary of the village. This is the location plan, and you can see that the land edge blue on there is land that is within the control of the Ministry of Justice, i.e. the prison. There were concerns that this wasn't shown on the original application, but the plan has been amended, as you see in front of you. This details the various aspects of the application and where they're located in relation to the site. My understanding of the site, and I admit I haven't been to this site, is that the only element that is outside the secure fence is the additional parking area there. You can see that the accommodation block is located well within the site, and that the reception area with the new passenger lift is located close to the parking areas. That provides more detail of the arrangement of the building. So you can see the football pitch, the race track, the running track there, the new block of accommodation, and the multi-faith building adjacent to it. This shows the extension to the car park. This includes 2 charging units as well for electric vehicles. You can see there the elevations of the house block and the multi-faith building. So you won't be surprised that the design is fairly institutional and ties in with the rest of the site, both in terms of design and in terms of scale. So you can see there the massing of buildings around it, and these are the 2 buildings that you're considering as part of this application, members. You can see that in terms of massing, they're broadly in line with existing buildings within the site, if not slightly lower. So that gives you an indication of the internal geography and character of the site, which is broadly flat. You can see the existing buildings, which again are fairly typical institutional prison type buildings. So that gives you an indication of how the multi-faith building will look internally. And that is the area where the visitors lift is proposed as an extension to the reception building. And finished there on the location plan. So members, this is an existing site in use as a prison. And the principle of this development is acceptable given the existing use of the site. The development is well within the operational area, so there is no significant extension apart from the small car park extension outside the secure fencing. We have received comments in relation to ecology, which require conditions relating to the provision of a landscape ecological management plan and a construction environmental management plan. There's also been correspondence received in relation to a footpath close to the site. It should be noted that the footpath isn't a public right of way, that it is within private ownership, and that it is closed for security reasons, and it isn't relevant in terms of the determination of this application, Chairman. So the application is recommended for approval. In terms of GI RAMs, the GI RAMs unilateral undertaking is not required in this instance, given the nature of the institution, Chairman, but we will still need to look at it in terms of nutrient neutrality. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Phil Houghton of the Ministry of Justice. You have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Phil Houghton, and as we said before, I work for the Ministry of Justice.
If you could just move your microphone right in front of you, because you're very softly spoken and we've got aircon buzzing away. Thank you.
There is a substantial need for new prison places. The MOJ is embarking on an ambitious programme to expand and modernise the prison estate, delivering over 20,000 additional places by 2027 across the UK. For HMP Wayland, a single 2-storey house block is proposed, which provides 121 new beds, and in doing so, replacing F-wing and H-wing accommodation, and that means an overall net increase of 41 beds or places. The proposed development is located centrally within the existing prison and is of a height that is consistent within the estate. It will not have a significant impact on the surrounding area, either visually or operationally. There is an imperative need to provide new prison places and modern sustainable buildings that will deliver positive outcomes. We believe the following planning benefits will be provided by the development: new prison places to meet identified need, improved resettlement and rehabilitation outcomes for prisoners, a minimum 10% biodiversity net gain, and a high quality sustainable prison that will achieve BREEAM outstanding. Furthermore, it will provide local employment opportunities. I'd just like to take a moment to address a couple of other matters that might be of consideration. You touched on the access path, thank you, and that is a security issue in terms of why that path isn't open, but we do continue the dialogue on that. But as we've said, it's not a material matter to the scheme, we believe. In terms of transport assessment was undertaken and no issues raised either in respect of the quality or the accuracy of the report, and County Highways had no comments. Ecological Survey, there is a condition proposed that requires further details to be submitted in respect of the new lighting, and this will be designed to limit light spread and to minimise any impact on either ecology or for local residents. In terms of just touch on the nitrate neutrality briefly, we're not using soakaways to dispose of surface water. Therefore, we are not introducing any new waterways on the site, which, if used, could mobilise any contaminants and increase the risk to watercourses. During the construction period, surface water will be carefully managed to ensure there is no risk of contamination or overloading of the local water network. Our contractor have strict policies and standards for management and disposal of water used during the construction. So, for example, concrete lorry and skip washdown will be undertaken in a sealed, bundled skip and pumped out and removed from site by an approved waste carrier for disposal. We are very appreciative of all the work that's been done by the officers. We're grateful for that work and how they've engaged with us, and we're delighted that the recommendation is for approval. Thank you for hearing us today.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members at all. No. Okay. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. Yeah, Simon, the footpath you were talking about, is that Manor Road that's closed, been closed off? Oh, sorry.
I have to say, I don't know. I haven't been to the site, but I could look over to the agent. Yeah.
I know that the parish council are concerned about the safety of employees? And is there any way that there could be another footpath made, say off the Thompson Road? They just, obviously they have concerns about people in the village walking to the prison. I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Yes, there is that potential, and we are aware of that. Just to reiterate, the reason for the footpath being closed at the moment is just concerns around security and sort of contraband being overthrows. That's the issue at hand. There is a fence, there is a gate, and that's locked. It would only take unlocking that to allow that footpath to be used. But yes, there is the potential for additional footpath.
Okay, thank you very much. Going to Kai Bird.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's worth drawing attention to the Crime Reduction Officer's comments, which says that the design attempts to deter criminal and antisocial behaviour. Thank you.
It certainly does. And could I say, while you're on that, if you want to, I mean, I actually had a visit to the prison with the chairman of the county council when I was chairman of Breckland. And I was really surprised at some, I mean, you know, we just think we lock guys away, that's it, fine, we don't have to have anything to do with them. But I met some really, really terrific chaps, and it was unfortunate circumstances that actually got them there. And, you know, that given the opportunity, they can turn their lives around. And this is part of that with this, with the buildings and the recreation facilities, is to let them get rehabilitated in their own ways. But very commendable to Wayland Prison. Councillor Kybird.
Yeah, in fact, our crime reduction officer suggests that, or encourages the applicant to liaise with the client and consider applying for the full Association of Chief Police Officers Crime Prevention Initiative Award.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Okay, we've excised that enough. So for this item, which is 9D 3PL 2021 1706, it's a full application for Griston. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Okay, this is approved. Thank you for your time. Thank you. You can leave and take your bodyguards with you. Okay, we go to item 9E 3PL 2022-0132 at Colkirk. I've got Councillor Charles Joyce of the Parish Council and David Winch of Breckland Bridge, please. If you'd like to come and sit on the right-hand side, please. Julie's now leaving us. She has another function to go to, and we've got Ruth in place. Okay. Who's doing this?
I've got the whirling circle of doom at the moment.
Okay, we're still having issues. Come back, Rebecca, all is forgiven. Can't understand why these people want to have holidays. Whatever next. Yeah, children, holidays. It's awful. We've got a big stick, Becky, ready to smash the equipment for us. Good. Don't take too long, otherwise I shall start rabbiting on and say something I will regret.
What happens when you get amateurs in?
Okay. We're away. Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application that members may be familiar with. It's here because the applicant is Breckland Bridge, and it's a variation of condition number 22 of planning permission, with the reference given, to vary the wording to enable works to continue up to slab level across all plots in advance of this condition being discharged. And the current condition restricts the works, and it was part of a variation to works up to slab level of plot 8. So it's an amendment to the variation to the condition. The site, as you can see, is about 0.95 hectares, currently consists of rough grassland, and the photos will go on to show just what the site is like. That's the wider context. That's a beton. You can see the site plan outlined in red, and you can see that the red plan extends across the highways. This is about off-site highways works for this application, which will be detailed, but so members can see. The access has been approved and was approved in the original application, but this is about the condition regarding the off-site highway works, and you can see on the site in relation context there. That's the proposed block plan for the site. This is the plan as approved. There's no variations to this coming through. As I said, this is only in relation to condition 22 with regards to the wording that I will come on to. And this is the site. Just show that it's grassland. As I said, I do believe that's the works to plot 8 have been taken on some of the photos, shown in some of the photos. And the undeveloped site there. This is the road network. This is the part of the road in question, which is from the access to the site for the off-site works there. And looking in the other direction, just give members an idea of the, going up to the corner there, members an idea of the locality, and back to the proposed block plan. This application has been subject to a variation previously, which did amend the previous condition on the original planning permission with regards to the starting of the development for the off-site highways works to plot 8. And that has been obviously approved. This is to vary that variation to something different. There has been an objection from the parish council, which is summarised within your report. There's no objections from the tree and countryside consultant, and there's been one letter of representation, and their comments again summarised in your report, which is against the variation with regards heavy duty farm traffic, saying there's no pedestrian walkway and the road itself is very narrow, often requiring one-way traffic. They do not believe this road could safely sustain heavy building equipment, and they would like to ensure that highways improvements are complete before such traffic is allowed to the site. That's your local representation in objection to the application. The principle of the application was decided on the original application. So all members are looking at today is the matters which are applied for, which is the variation to condition 22 only. So the principal development for the 21 dwellings has been agreed. That permission is live, it's a standard permission. If members can see at paragraph 2.2 of the report, that's condition 22 in full. Unless members would like me to, I won't read it out, as I know everybody has read it. And the variation, the suggested variation, is also at paragraph 2.3 of your report. Sorry, no, that's the bit that is regarding the reasons, and that goes down to say it. So if you go down 2 paragraphs from 2.3, it's still within that one. The Highways Authority have objected to this variation, objected to this application. It's worth noting the Highways Authority did object to the original planning application with regards to these off-site highways works. The variation is only to vary the trigger point. These off-site highways works do still need to be looked at. The applicant has stated, and it's within the report, and I do believe it was May, it was 2021, that the applicant actually submitted the details to the local highways authority, and they have not been agreed currently. So they have been working, trying to get them agreed, and currently the development of 21 dwellings is not progressing owing to the off-site highways works trying to be agreed. The variation of the condition does still give a trigger point, not just prior to occupation, but gives a trigger point which is to slab level, but all dwellings. So it will allow the commencement of the development to a greater form than it is currently, but is still quite a low trigger point. With regards to the representation, the local representation, there will be obviously heavy goods vehicles entering the site, but the access has been approved. So the access was approved. This condition is relating to the off-site highways improvements and the section 278 works, which the Highways Authority need to approve. I don't want to stress this too much, but I'm going through it in detail so that you're very aware of actually what's being requested, what has already been approved, what can commence and what they're asking to be commenced. With regards to the off-site highways improvements, highways objected on the original application, and the original application was approved having the knowledge that the off-site highways works are potentially going to be subsized. So the width of the footpath, for example, is not going to be up to highway standards. This was in the original full application that was before members. It was detailed in the officer report, and the application was approved with the highways objection and acknowledging these facts. So the current application, as I said, is to vary condition 22 with regards to the trigger point only. The applicant will still need to discharge the condition. The details are still with the Highways Authority working towards a resolution. And we've always known that potentially the resolution to highways exacting standards and size standards may not be achieved. But the current application before you is to amend the trigger point for works up to slab level, and the example condition is in there for all plots, all 21 plots. Sorry if I've gone on a little bit and it feels like I've laboured the point, but it's just so you know what's within the remit. So the planning commission is there, the planning commission is live, and what it's looking is to bring forward the development to a further stage to deliver some houses on this site which have been granted for planning permission, subject to conditions such as this one. The report goes into detail other matters with regards to trees and the ecology, GIRAMS payment. The application is now liable for the GIRAMS payment. So the recommendation for approval is with the same caveats as Mike's very precise caveat previously with regards to the nutrient neutrality and the £185.93 per dwelling. But the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Charles Joyce of the Parish Council of Colkirk. Are you a chairman, vice chairman, or?
Chairman.
Oh, the chairman.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. If
Thank
you'd
you.
like to carry on, you've got 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Charles Joyce and Chairman of the Colkirk Parish Council and a lifelong resident of the village. Speaking today regarding planning permission 3PL 2021-1265 bar concerning the variation conditions number 22, enabling the works to continue up to slab level of all the plots. My comments reflect not only the parish council views, but also the views of the vast majority of the village. While we all appreciate that planning has already been granted, subject to various conditions imposed by the council, the safety aspect of the Wissenset Road has always been a serious concern. I'd like to remind you this application was first consulted in 2017. I had communication with Highways at the end of last week, and there appears to be no significant progress since we were last sitting here back in November, when permission was granted for just the one plot to go to slab level. The question that I really would like answered today is why are we here looking at to allow a further 20 plots to be built to slab level with no progress having been made since the first plot was granted back in November. It really does appear that all the effort should be put into the element of highways and waiting until a safe structural design of the road layout has been approved and ideally constructed before we go ahead. It's really a bit like putting the cart before the horse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've got David Winch, please. You're just here for answering questions, I believe. Just questions or? I need your microphone on if you're going to say anything. Oh, hang on a sec, hang on. Right, fire away. Try and put your microphone on now. There you go.
Fine. On the question of, yeah, we are waiting for the Highway Authority to respond to our plans, which we sent in May. We sent them again, or they have not raised any issues with all those plans. The last communication we had from them was at the end of January of this year. We said they needed another 12 weeks to consult. Yes, we would like to do the work. We'd like to get on, do the work, provide the paths, etc. We are not in dispute with the Highway Authority. They are just not responding to us. Hence the application.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. It's open to questions from members. No. Oh, there we go. Councillor Atwell and then Councillor Kittle Morris, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to be consistent as I was with the original application and the variation that we previously heard for plot 8. I do not agree that we should be going forward any further with this until such a time as Highways come back and approve the layout of the footpath. I think the problem is that they probably don't own the land where the footpath needs to be constructed. So I suspect there's probably a land ownership issue, which is why there's this delay. And it seems to me what we're trying to do here is we're trying to go ahead, approve the construction of a car, but at the end of it, we aren't quite sure whether the brakes and the airbags are going to fit, which is, I think, is a vital component for the people of Colkirk. If this was anybody else, I would just say, I think the optics of this, if we approve this today, are pretty terrible, really, because this is a Breckland Bridge project. We know Breckland Council is a shareholder in Breckland Bridge, and I'm looking at this as how would we treat this if this was anybody else's application? I just think at the moment we need to pause, take a breath, get the highway issue resolved, because that is a safety issue. I hear what you're saying. I was at the original, when the original application was heard, the point was made, they didn't think that they could construct a path to full highway standard. That was accepted. But at the moment, we haven't got anything to say that they can actually construct the path full stop. And that is an important component of this development. So I'd urge my colleagues just to say, look, we'll pause this and we need to get on the highways and get a definitive answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
I think Councillor Attlewell's said what I wanted to say exactly. I do represent the parish of Colkirk and end up with another hat on. So I do feel for this development. Although it's Breckland Bridge, I think there is a problem. We need to get that footway done. The section 278 needs to be signed before anything else is done to this site. And I will be objecting to the approval of this application.
Any further questions at all? Councillor Gilbert.
That's right. Thank you, Chairman. Having heard what's been said, I'm wondering whether the best option might not be to defer this and try and get the answers from highways before we actually have a refusal on this. I would like to recommend a deferral.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Simon to comment first. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I think there's a couple of things that we need to bear in mind here. One is that there's already a planning consent on this site with the off-site highway works agreed in principle. We're having issues, or there are wider issues at the moment in terms of the discharge of highways conditions and the Section 278 process, and the length of time that the Section 278 process is taking at the moment, and the implications that that has for any developer, not just Breckland Bridge, but any developer in being able to discharge highway conditions. And I think the issue we have here, as with other developments, is that by not agreeing to this application, development will essentially stall on this site, with implications in terms of construction workers, etc., and delivery of much needed housing. And I think it would probably be sending the wrong message out to the highway authority in terms of their process and the relevance of that. They have a separate safety process which they are going through, and they need to be able to go through that process, and we need to be able to extend the time period in relation to the condition to enable that process to go through, but the development to continue to be built out. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Attwell.
The simple fact is, I hear what Mr. Wood has just said, but the simple fact is, until the Section 278 is signed, you can't guarantee that this footpath is going to be constructed. We could end up with a situation where we've got all the dwellings and none of the infrastructure outside the site what was originally agreed with the original application. What we're really talking about today is the trigger point. All I'm saying is the existing trigger point at the moment should remain. And actually, if highways haven't got the resources and they're not expediting this quick enough, I think if we let this go through today, all we're doing is we're just we're trying to cover up for their failings, really. I think the fact if we made a stand today and say we're not altering a trigger point, I think we're actually applying some pressure to highways to say, look, you are causing a blockage here. We need to free up these developments. We need this signed Section 278. I think the people in Colkirk, I think they're accepting now that the development's going to happen because the application's been approved. But I think for their benefit, that Section 278 needs to be signed with the existing trigger point that we've got in place. We said we go with the one for plot 8, and that was, for me, was a step too far, but this committee approved it. But unless you've got that signed, as I said, you can't, I'm come back to the car analogy, you can't tell me at the moment with any certainty that when the car is constructed, the airbags and the brakes are going to be in place, which is a key component of the whole application. That's my stance.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think we can turn that round as well and say that there doesn't appear to be any undue impediment as to why the section 278 is not being agreed, and it may well be down to resource. What I don't think we should be doing is putting the developer in a position where construction is halted with all the subsequent economic and viability issues that may well have in relation to the development of this site for the shortcomings of the Highway Authority. And I think we need to be able to give them that scope to continue working on site whilst the Highway Authority can effectively get its act together and agree the section 278. We are only going up to slab level. This is not a significant advance in terms of the development in relation to further enforcement action if at some stage the section 278 is not agreed and is actually refused by the Highway Authority. So you would still have the ability to address that situation at a relatively early stage in the development.
Councillor Attawell.
Does Norfolk County Council Highways own all the land that this footpath is to be constructed on? I think that's a fundamental question, because if there's third parties involved, that's probably what the holdup is. And that's why I think it's really important that the 278 is signed. And I'd like to hear from the council solicitor about his feelings as to the element of risk and how would we approach it without having the section 27. Can we say with absolute certainty that that's going to be constructed unless we've got that signed section 278?
Shall I go to Mr. Winch first? Yeah, Mr. Winch, if you'd like to respond as much as you can, please.
I can confirm that all of the I can confirm that all of the highway works designed are within the adopted highway, as confirmed by Norfolk County Council.
Has that answered?
I'm not aware whether we've had that confirmation or not, but I've no reason to doubt it either, Councillor.
Mr. Horn? I can't guarantee anything.
Okay, well, I can guarantee Mr. Winch is sitting there and has just told us. And, you know, Mr. Winch is here on behalf of Breckland Bridge. So as far as I'm concerned, I would take that anyway. Councillor Attawell?
With all due respect, he's the applicant. So the applicant is telling me that. I want somebody who isn't the applicant to confirm. And nobody who isn't the applicant, i.e. Highways, is here to confirm to me that all of that land is within the ownership of Highways. And if you had the signed section 278 with the party signed up to that, that's the trigger.
Sorry.
Perhaps it would assist if I advised maybe that the answer lies in the following question. What is the incremental effect, if any, in terms of potential highway safety issues of allowing this particular amendment on the condition? Does it materially affect potential highway safety if instead of it only being one plot that can be built to slab level, all of the plots can be?
And I think that that is the question you should be asking yourself. I'm not giving you an answer, but that's the question. Does the fact that we are now allowing, if we granted this application, all of the plots to be built to slab level, potentially affect the ultimate highway safety issue? Your officers, your planning officers, think not. You may beg to disagree in your resolution. You might ask yourself, in determining the question, well, if that is the case, i.e. that the amendment doesn't affect highway safety, why didn't they apply for this last time instead of only one plot? Don't know. But I think that is the material question that you need to ask yourself.
So in terms of ownership, on both the original and on this application, notice was served on Norfolk County Council Highways as being in control of part of the red line land. So they served notice on Norfolk County Council, who are shown as being owners of that land.
Absolutely. That is one issue that relates to the section 278, but the reason why I gave you my rather concise answer is there may be multiple other reasons why this has not been executed yet. We do not know, and I think Councillor Attewell's view is that until it is executed and completed, it hasn't been.
I have to leave this to members to decide, but I am sorry, I'll take Councillor Kittle-Morris first, then I'll
Chairman, as I understand it, a footpath which is to specification is 1.8 metres wide, and as I also understand it, there is insufficient land to make a 1.8 metre footpath along that particular road on highways land. That's as I understand it, and I suspect that I don't know, but I suspect that 278 signature is awaiting a legal or a, how can I put it, a dispensation to put something in which is substandard. That's my reading of the situation. I understand what the solicitor has said, and I think probably that would persuade me to not put my hand up for either refusal or approval.
okay, please do.
Final point for me, I promise. The point here is that there's not going to be any occupation of any of the plots. If you grant the variation of the condition, instead of only one plot being developed to slab level, all of them will be. But that's not going to result in any increase in traffic. The net effect is zero, save for the fact that the developer is at risk that having carried out more development, there might be a big fat no at the end of the day. But that's their problem, not ours. They are at risk. And the fact is that in the meantime, there is absolutely no increased risk on highway safety because the plots are not being occupied. So you could form the view that if the developers wish to take the risk of carrying out extra development there, and actually the condition can't be discharged for whatever reason, including maybe the section 78 is not executed or completed, that they do so at their own risk, but it doesn't actually have an effect on highway safety or any other issue.
Okay, I'm concerned that as one of our major consultees, being the highways is that we're getting sort of like this little brick wall, and they've locked themselves in a bunker somewhere, and they don't want to talk to anybody. I would like to go forward with some form of communication, forcing their hand slightly to bring us down to help with our decision making. And with that in mind, I'm putting it to you as members, if you agree with me, and as stated right from the beginning, I think by you, Councillor Atwell, was that we defer the item, because I find it very difficult to go forward. I agree that as far as Brecklin Bridge are concerned, there's not going to be a lot a problem with them doing the drainage, the road, the internal road network, and the slab heights of virtually every property if they wish. If they can't then get out because the highways will not do their side of it, then nothing happens. We just have a site full of concrete. But at this moment in time, I'd be happier going forward knowing that we were all singing from the same hymn sheet, because at this element of all the work that has to be carried out on site, there will be construction traffic. And if we've got construction traffic on a very small road that is in need of a pavement or pavement extensions, etc., then we already have a problem before we go any further. So with that, I'm asking you members if you agree with my proposition that we defer this item. It was you, sorry, Councillor Gilbert. So myself and Councillor Gilbert are putting forward that we defer this item because I have a show of hands for deferment. I will be putting my hand up as well, Ruth. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And those against? 2. Someone didn't vote, or have we lost someone? No, I voted as well. Did I count myself? Maybe I didn't count myself after all that. Okay, make that 10-2. No, it can't be.
Comment, I think the highways response would be fairly swift, I would have thought. Could we have this back for the next meeting, please?
We will. I think we will attempt to do that in light of trying to get this whole thing moving. Yeah. Okay. And Brecklin Bridge officers will have blokes sitting there with shovels and everything saying, "What should we do today?" Okay. Thank you very much. This item is deferred. I do apologise. You've been sitting here quite a considerable time to hear that. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, members. So we move on our agenda to item 10, which is applications determined by the Executive Director of Place, which are there for your information. And then item 11 is the appeal summary, also there for your information. You've got them on your agenda or on your laptops. And with that, I'm going to close the meeting. Please do not move. We have a presentation. So we'd like to cease the...
Another comment, Chairman. I think the number of appeals going through as being dismissed, I think is encouraging. I think congratulations to A, the policy, and B, the officers for
exactly
carrying that out.
And members. Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is closed. Ruth, could you cease recording, please?